It is the most magical time of the year. That's right. It is the most magical time of the year because it is NFL draft season and it is NFL draft day. This is now the NFL draft. This is the first round of the NFL draft. All of that kicks off today here on this Thursday, and this now will kick off that day with our episode of Mic'd Up here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and Pittsburgh Sports Now. And of course, all of our draft coverage, including our live first round draft show, will happen here on the channel. So there's a reason to subscribe, and also all of our coverage over there at SteelersNow.com. We are going to talk our thoughts of the Steelers' first round pick in particular. We also are going to talk some quarterbacks in this draft, and maybe if some believe in some, and maybe if they don't. I'll tell you one I don't believe in that's getting tons of hype going into this draft, and also connecting this draft to some Pitt players and how they may fare towards the weekend of the draft, and Pitt potentially very involved in this draft, maybe surprisingly for some. I'm your host here, Mike Asti. That's Mike Vukovcan. Again, Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services. Doug Martin's number at 412-849-5894. And before we get underway, I just learned something I wasn't even aware of, but my friend Mike Vukovcan over here is a formerly draft-obsessed person. He maybe was Nick Farabaugh of maybe a decade or so ago. Nick Farabaugh, now our draft analyst over there at Steelers Now. So, Mike, I didn't realize this, but you were one of those draft-obsessed people. You were a Mel Kiper draft analyst type.
Oh, there's no question, Mike. I used to buy all those magazines. I was a little bit ahead of my time. I got my whole life. For anyone that knows me, my whole life has been I've been made to do sports in some way or the other.
Right.
In junior high, I remember the story. I just told you about this.
Yeah.
At Cambridge Junior High, nothing against the teachers, but I was in good with a couple of the teachers, and on draft day, I remember going to the I missed a class. I kind of went the back door, and I went to the library, in back of the office there where the television, where the teachers ate, and I was back there with a couple of the teachers, and they let me. And I was back there, and we watched the draft, and it was the draft where Steelers took Rod Woodson.
Okay.
I remember that. I was big time. I was doing mock drafts when I was in sixth grade.
So were you studying out of magazines? Were you getting physical magazines and studying out of there? Because that's
existed. That's I used to subscribe to everyone's Pro Football Weekly or whatever the magazines were at the time. And then I remember, and then I got my first job at KDK, and my favorite time of the year was. It's completely different than it is now. When the Steelers had their first round pick, it was our goal, Bruce Shepman, Frank Wilson, and I, we had to track down the Steelers' first round pick, and it was our goal to have them live on our 6 o'clock newscast.
Much tougher then than now.
Oh my God, it was especially when they took Eric Green and Huey Richardson and some of these guys. It was that's probably one of the reasons why I loved it. I still follow it a lot, but nowhere near to where I did 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Unbelievable. I did not know that about you. We're learning something new about each other here during this show. That's really cool. And also, that was before being a draft analyst was cool. So you were a bit ahead of your time there, and any of those former teachers of yours, if they're watching Mic'd Up, we appreciate you letting Mike indulge himself on the draft at that point and get away from your class. But you graduated, so it didn't hurt you there. It didn't hurt you there, and had a great career from then on. And that had to be much more difficult than now. Now you can see somebody live reaction on Twitter, the player immediately where they are because they're tweeting. That's not the case back then. You had no idea what was going on, and unless they were a legit first round pick or a star, they might not have been out there as much.
Heath Miller was a hell of a guy to try to find. He was in some small town, I remember.
That's even more recently. But
in Virginia. Yeah, in Virginia. And it was a place that it wasn't in some major city. I forget his hometown, but it was some small
Yeah,
putt
he
on
went to
the panel.
UVA, and yeah.
Yeah. So that was that's where I go back to.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll have to talk more about that sometime off the air. But again, mic'd up here, Mike Vukovcan and Mike Asti. We just got some trip down memory lane there. Mike V, as a former draft analyst here. We do have our draft analyst Nick Faribaugh bringing you that coverage in his mock draft over there at Steelers Now. So go there and quickly before that draft occurs here is we're the morning of the first round and see how he does. I will tell you, he accurately mocked Alex Highsmith last year. We were very surprised and gave him our clapping round of applause there during that draft show last year. But to get underway, Mike, put your draft hat back on, I guess. The Steelers are in the midst of a very important draft. This has been called a more important draft than any of the past and many even of the future. This might be the most important draft of Kevin Colbert's career, maybe of Mike Tomlin's career. This is about the now, but also the future. They have several needs for sure. Many have discussed running back. Many have said that running back in the first round, not the best idea in terms of shelf life and risk, but maybe that'll be something that they have to do, say a Najee Harris and company. Many have said offensive tackle. Many have said center because Pouncey retiring, even defense. Some are even saying linebacker for that 24th pick, and some want them to trade out of it altogether. It depends on what goes on in front of them for sure, but what are your thoughts on what the Steelers should and what they will end up having to do at that 24th pick? If they keep that 24th pick, will that even be where they're picking in the first round?
Well, I think the hot talk for Twitter and all the talk show hosts and
Right.
shows like us are that they're going to take a running, or they're projecting the running back. I
Right.
just think that with that out there's too many. There'll be teams ahead of them that make moves, and I don't believe any of those guys, Harris,
Right.
ATN, they're not going to be there. So I think that's going to kind of be a moot point. I look for the Steelers to do one of two things. I think they'll either they need draft capital. This is a team that has holes on it. They need to rebuild their roster.
For sure.
And I can see them, if that running back isn't there, I could see them trading back and trying to pick up, an extra second, extra third, whatever they pick up. And that would be my second option. But if they do keep their pick, I think they're going to go offensive line, and I believe they'll pick the guy out of Oklahoma State, left tackle, Tevin Jenkins.
That's actually the player that I mocked in many shows I've appeared on and shows that I've done, on different media drafts. So Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State. I will say, and the reason why I went Tevin Jenkins in many of those programs is because, and I can attest, doing a media mock draft, it's an incredible hassle to have people trading in and out of picks and trying to swipe picks. I even actually messaged the guy before I did one of them. Could I trade out? He said, please don't. So I went with Tevin Jenkins. But if they have the opportunity to trade out of that, I would think that probably would be the smartest decision, because I do agree with you. As much as it's been that debate, and we've debated it before, I don't think Najee Harris is going to be there. I don't think any running back worth a salt is really going to be there. If you're basically drafting a running back in the first round is a risk, more risk than other positions. I'm not normally an advocate for it. If you're going to do it, though, you got to have an elite back be that guy. You have to really feel confident in that back. And if it's not Najee Harris, I don't see another one that I really feel that confident in. He would be that guy for me. Some have had him going to the Steelers. That's been a popular mock. But I don't see how he would get by. Some even think Miami, I think 18, could be taking Najee Harris. So I don't see how he would get by several of those teams. I don't see how there's a running back that's legit available. Now, that might be a problem for the Steelers overall, because they have Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels, Anthony McFarland. It's not the greatest running back group, and I don't know how they would improve it necessarily. But I don't see a legit one there for the Steelers. And if they can trade out and stockpile picks, that probably would make sense. Tevin Jenkins is an all-pro potential. He is first-team Big 12, Oklahoma State, and that clearly gives you major competition. However, you might be able to get that type of player, that position for sure, in the second round or even later. So the best bet might be to trade out of it, stockpile second or third round picks, because you have so many needs. But if they can't move and if they want to take a player there, then I would think Tevin Jenkins whether you can get a running back or not, whether you can get Harris or not, Tevin Jenkins to me is the safest overall pick. He feels a need for now, which is protecting Ben. He feels a need for the future, which is protecting whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Rudolph or anyone else. That will help the running backs, whether it be McFarland, Benny Snell, or whoever it may be. That will help. They certainly need a better offensive line. He would fill that left tackle role, which has been a major question, and that would maybe throw a monkey wrench in Zach Banner's plans in particular, potentially, or, as he's somebody that maybe thinks he's going to start there. But even if you have Jenkins starting years from now or learning, it would just help that line could be that guy of the future after they lost so much, even with Pouncey being gone. So that seems to be a safe pick for me, but if Harris is there, I would guess they're going to take him just because it'd be hard to turn him away when he is that one dominant in the rough, despite the risk of the position. They do need running back so bad, but I don't think he's going to be there either.
Yeah, I agree. And I think during Tomlin's press conference the other day in Colbert, right, they threw out a couple things talking about the running game struggles is more than just I forget the exact term.
No, they say that all the time. Yeah,
that's true. And I think it's true in that the offensive line was poor. So if they're able to pick a left tackle, and I do believe that somewhere within the draft, within the first 4 rounds, they'll pick a center as well.
Right,
you're solidifying things right there. And the other thing he said was, I think Tomlin talked about, who the left tackle was. He said that's as of right now, and it's not worth the paper it's printed or something. Right. The fact that we're saying this now, but in a couple of days that could be the change. Right. So I think that's the case. I think the offensive line is the safest pick. Running back is a risky pick considering the makeup of the team around them. But I would have no problem picking a running back, and it's just by coincidence, whether you believe in those or not. But 2 years ago, the number 24 pick in the NFL draft, which the Steelers have the 24 pick. 2 years ago, the Oakland Raiders took a running back out of Alabama. Why am I forgetting his name? Oh my God, I'm embarrassed now.
I was wondering where you were going. You went in that direction.
No, I have it right here. No, I'm really embarrassed here.
Because there's been a few Alabama running backs.
Josh Jacobs.
Okay, 2 years ago. Yeah.
See a similarity? 24 pick, running back out of Alabama, Najee Harris.
I see that. I see that.
So, I don't think it's a bad pick. I know there's been a lot of controversy, but if he's the best player on the board, and I do believe he would be the best running back. I think it's by far he's the best running back.
Right.
I would take him, but I don't think it'll happen. I think he'll be gone. Somebody's going to draft ahead of time, and then Colbert's going to have to field trade offers or pick the best available player.
Yeah, I do think that if Harris is gone, it won't require necessarily a freak-out session by the Steelers, because I think they're going to do what we're talking about here. They're going to field some offers. They're maybe going to try to trade out. If they can't, they're going to take Tevin Jenkins or an equivalent and go safe with an offensive tackle type player. And that's a pick that I don't think will be as polarizing. I will say maybe it's not as good for us or our shows and our sites to have the Steelers go Tevin Jenkins, because that's not going to generate – no one's going to really complain. You need to fill the offensive tackle. You need to protect. It'll help the running back. They've been saying it for a while, and it is true that when a running back struggles, it's not just on the running back. It can elevate a running back who's maybe average to be better if an offensive tackle can protect and the O-line can protect. It's big for a quarterback as well. So it's a big building block for the future. It is a safer pick. Mark Ingram's another Alabama back that went in the last decade or so. So Alabama's been able to generate running backs to have success in the NFL. They maybe have not as much success at another position that we'll get to in a moment, but they've been able to generate running backs to have success in the National Football League, and they can have an impact right away in the league. It's just how long can they be with you? Are they going to sign that second deal? That's unlikely. That's where the risk comes in. But if you're really trying to win next year, you might say to yourself, and certainly if Harris is there, and I don't think he will either, but if he is there, you're probably saying to yourself, look, maybe it's not as much of a long-term investment, but we can't go into the season with Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, Jalen Samuels. If he gives us 3 years of solid production, maybe the last couple years of Ben or the last year of Ben, then that's what we're going to do. So he might be somebody they can't resist if he's there.
You brought up something, and I've heard this. I've heard this talk, and I don't get it. Is not from what you said, but somebody else is if they're gonna, as though this pick of running back just is going to be for next year. Hell with next year.
Right.
He's going to be a good player 2 years from now. They need a running back, period. It's not as though they're a team that's on the brink and they're one player away. They have a lot of holes. So if they can get a running back that's going to be good for them for the next 4 or 5 years, pick him.
I hear you. He would be the only player I'd be okay with. I do think that conversation comes into in terms of players that have signed their second deal with the Steelers. Running back has been such a rarity. I think it's happened once. So that kind of where that comes into.
I've heard that too. But the Steelers made a very competitive offer to try to bring back Le'Veon Bell, and he was, he wasn't smart enough to take the deal, and he lost money. It's not as though Le'Veon Bell lost production. He was a perfect guy in this offense. He didn't see that. He was looking for, I don't know, a rap deal or more.
Yeah, he made a wrong decision.
He lost it all, and now he's just a journeyman player in the league. So the Steelers, if he was smart and he had a smart agent, he would have signed that deal. And then this narrative of not bringing a running back for a second term. Wouldn't be floated around.
That's true. No, I mean, it certainly might have been better for him on the field, fitting into that system. He definitely should have signed it. There's some rumors that his agent wanted him to, and he didn't. Again, so I don't know where his head was, but that's a truth. But I guess it also goes to in terms of recent championship teams. You need a running. I think this is the difference. If the Steelers had a good running game, but not an elite running back, then I would say even if Harris is the best available, they shouldn't take him because you don't need an elite running back to win. There have been teams that won championships with a collective group of running backs, but not an elite running back. Even when the Rams went to the Super Bowl, Todd Gurley was hurt that whole playoffs. People bring him up as he's one of them, but he didn't play. The whole postseason, it was C.J. Anderson rolled off his couch and led them to the big game. But the Steelers' running game is so bad that it's almost like if you don't improve it, they're almost disqualified from contention next year. I don't see how they get into the playoffs or even beyond. Maybe they get in, but I don't see how they make much noise with that running back group the way it is. And I don't know how they honestly improve it at this point, if not in the draft. Unfortunately, there's really only one or two elite backs, depending on your opinion. So if he's there, I think they're going to do it. I wouldn't have as much of a problem in general with picking Harris as I would with running backs in general in the first round, but I don't think he's going to be there. So I do think it's a moot point. I do think he won't be there. Mike Vukovcan mic'd up here, Mike on Pittsburgh Sports Live and Pittsburgh Sports Now and Steelers Now. Once again, to remind you, hit the subscribe button. You can also follow along here on PSL for some of those videos Mike talked about, as well as our draft show through the first round to that first Steelers pick. And maybe we'll get through a whole show and the Steelers won't even pick. Who knows? Maybe they'll trade out of it. Again, presented by Martin Lawn Services at 412-849-5894. And Mike, sticking on the draft here a bit before we get to some Pitt talk and some Pitt players that could be involved in this draft. Out of the quarterbacks, because there are many, even though there's maybe only a few that truly get publicity, out of the quarterbacks that are going to be a part of this draft, who do you think are those quarterbacks that are going to have the best success in the league? Not where they're drafted or how much money they're going to make or any hype around them, but are going to have the most success in the league. And I will just tell you to start things off, because everyone's going to probably say Trevor Lawrence, certainly Justin Fields as well. Personally, for me, I don't believe in Mac Jones, because I know he's one that's brought up constantly. That's where I was going when I said Alabama churns running backs. They churn receivers. They don't usually churn quarterbacks. And literally the last quarterback to have success of anything of note from Alabama in the NFL is Joe Namath, who we know from these parts as well. So that tells you right there. I don't believe in Mac Jones, because many throw him as a third guy with those two. Are those two of your three? And who's your third guy if it's also not Mac Jones?
Man, Mike, we're being boring here.
We agree too much.
You and I are a lot alike. We think the same way. I think Mac Jones, I think he's going to be overrated. I think it's, I'm not going to say it's easy, because he's still you still have to throw it, but it's pretty easy. It makes it a lot easier when you're throwing to Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle as your wide receivers, and you have, you have a first round draft pick as a running back, and you have two offensive linemen.
And you're on a team that's leading most games.
Yeah,
you're up 20 points most of the time.
Yeah, go put that go put on that performance at Temple or
Right.
Rutgers or something, and then we'll start talking. I agree. I think Mac Jones. I think teams are going to spend probably Shanahan with San Francisco. He's traded up to get him, and I think he's going to be bad. I think the best quarterback in the draft is going to be Justin Fields from Ohio State.
Okay.
I know Trevor Lawrence. He's a little bit like Mac Jones as far as the talent around him, but Trevor Lawrence, you just see things there that tells you that this guy is a little bit out of this world.
Yeah, if he's not successful, that would be one of the biggest surprises in draft history, probably.
Yeah, but I think the best. I think one of the best quarterbacks, and I'm not going to compare him to Patrick Mahomes, but when Patrick Mahomes got drafted, he wasn't talked about as the best quarterback in the draft. We found that out 2-3 years later, and I think that's going to be the case with Justin Fields. I would advocate this. Colbert said he wasn't inclined to trade up. I will say this, that if Justin Fields starts to slide and we're talking about we're on pick 15 and Justin Fields is still there, I would do a lot to trade up in the draft to get him. I'm not big for trading up with the Steelers just because I think it costs too much and they need so many picks. But if you're going to be able to get yourself a quarterback that could be your franchise quarterback for the next 15 years, you do it. And I think Fields will be that guy. I think the second best quarterback in the draft will be Lawrence. And I also like Zach Wilson out of BYU. I think he'll be third. I'm not going to tell you I know very much about Trey Lance.
I was going to ask you your thoughts.
Yeah, they weren't on TV, so I'm not going to be one of these guys that tells you, oh, yeah, he's great. No, I see highlights, and everything in highlights looks good. So I'm not going to give an opinion on him because I've never seen him play live. But those are my three best, and I agree. I think Mac Jones will be a big disappointment.
Yeah, and Trey Lance, to his credit, he played in a great system. So for his level, his system has certainly been successful. We've seen quarterbacks have success from that level before. It's not like he'd be the first, but of course not going to have the tape, not going to have as much notoriety really or hype, and that's not going to generate in hype as the others because of where he was playing. But yeah, Mac Jones to me, Greg McElroy maybe is a comparison I got throw out there, and he's a great analyst on TV, but I think he's my age and he's done play in the NFL. So like that kind of screams Mac Jones to me. Yeah. I don't see much more. Maybe I'll be wrong again, but yeah, he screams like he would be the biggest risk of those. I think he'd be an incredible risk to take him, certainly for trading up to get him in terms of Mac Jones. And it just screams like a prototypical Jason White, for another example, who won a Heisman. Yeah. Just college quarterback that can't get it done in the pros. And Justin Fields would be that guy that if you say Kevin Colbert doesn't trade up, and that's true. He doesn't usually. He normally doesn't love it, but they did it for Devin Bush a couple of years ago. So it's not like the Steelers and Troy Polamalu before that. Right. It's not like the Steelers never do it, and Kevin Colbert proceeded over both of those drafts, so he certainly has done it before. If there's going to be a player you're going to trade – I will say this goes back to our opening topic. While the Steelers need a running back, they want an elite running back, and Harris could be that guy. If they're going to trade up for someone, it would have to be a Justin Fields. I don't think you trade up for Harris. No. You trade up for Justin Fields because that can be a generational 10, 15-year player to take over for Ben. It could even work out well for him to sit under Ben for a year. That could be a benefit to him not to be rushed in there. That could be a perfect fit for him. And he does have tons of weapons around receivers, Eric Ebron being there. So running back would still be a problem. Offensive tackle would need to be improved, of course, and they're going to draft those players. But Justin Fields would just be that player that you could not ignore. It was like a Devin Bush, the quarterback of your defense for the future. If you can get him and he's starting to slide, you certainly give it a shot. I don't think they're going to be able to leave the draft, though, with Justin Fields. I think even if he slides a little bit, and because there's somebody falling in love with Mac Jones, I don't see the Steelers being able to do it. I don't think they will do it. But that'll be something that obviously will be great for the franchise if they can, regardless of what else they get in the draft. That'll be more of a future move, and they won't be able to avoid it. It'll be interesting if he does slide, though, Mike, because as much as the Steelers should trade up and go get him, they wouldn't be the only team that would potentially have that interest as well. There could be some other teams late in that first round that maybe could once again want to trade up. Green Bay did it last year getting Love and kind of upsetting Aaron Rodgers. I don't know how much they think of Love. They're probably not doing it 2 years in a row, but there are other teams that maybe would do that as well. So we will see.
Yeah, everyone has a mock draft today. Everyone that has a Twitter account comes up with a mock draft.
Right.
But
or 13 mock drafts. Yes.
Yeah. One of the more ridiculous. I shouldn't say this because who knows? Maybe he'll be right. But if he's right, I'll walk to Heinz Field.
Okay.
Chris Sims from NBC and
he's a hot take artist.
Yeah, he has Justin Fields going 32 to Tampa Bay. There is no.
If he goes that far,
right, that's what I'm saying.
Imagine this scenario, because obviously that'd be great for them to sit him under Brady and then have him take over at some point. If Justin Fields falls all the way there, fans and media of the Packers, Patriots, Steelers, 6 other teams are going to go nuts. I mean, you'd have to have teams pass on him.
Yeah, that's
it'd be an Aaron Rodgers slide. That's what it would be reminiscent of.
To me, this is a mock draft of somebody. We have a lot of these guys in the media. They want to throw something out there just to get people to talk about them.
It worked on Mike Duck.
Well, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. This is why people like this do this, because there's no way that's going to happen. And his other pick, I don't think this is ridiculous, but I think you mentioned the word very risky earlier. He has the Steelers taking Landon Dickerson, the center out of Alabama.
Okay.
No way would I take him in the first round. I just think he has too many red flags.
You can get that position elsewhere too.
Yes, and with his injury history, if you take out injuries, he's the best center in the draft, but you can't. The guy has an injury past, and you can't. Where the Steelers are right now, you can't afford to spend your first round pick on not necessarily that position, but a guy with his past.
Yeah, to say the least. And I think the Steelers need to hit on this first round pick, or their first pick, wherever it may be, even if they trade out and it's early second round. The first player they draft needs to be successful for the long haul, or else this whole draft is a problem, and the rebuilding process, which eventually will have to occur after Ben, will be a problem. And the whole philosophy of trying to win now and rebuild at the same time won't be able to occur if you don't improve yourself in this draft, and that means the early round pick. So that's too risky. There are too many risks involved with some of those players. That's why I think Tevin Jenkins will be the safest pick if they can't get Harris. I don't think Fields will be there, but if he's there, they certainly can't avoid him either. Mic'd up here again on PSL and PSN, and of course I will let everyone know, if you haven't been over there yet, you should have already read it, but I'll throw it out there now. Our Nick Farabaugh does mock Najee Harris to the Steelers at 24. Presented by Martin Lawn Services here. Mike, Pitt involved, some Pitt players. I saw that interview you did with DJ Turner. Pitt players could be taken in this draft, more probably a weekend situation. What are your thoughts on some of the Pitt players, Turner in particular, that could be taken in this draft, and how they may fare depending on the system, because that's big in the NFL?
Well, I think, when people talk about why you go to college, why you go to a certain college, people bring up atmospheres and, winning and all that. To me, you go to one of the biggest reasons you go to a college is, can they get you to the NFL?
Should be the reason if you're good enough. Yeah.
If you're that type of talent. And while Pitt has struggled, or maybe hasn't lived up to the expectations of the winning, and the crowds aren't very attractive, one thing the program can say is that they get people to the league, and that has to be Pat Narduzzi and his assistants' top recruiting pitch, and it'll be the case this year. I believe I talked to two NFL draft analysts today, one from CBS, one from Pro Football Network, and they believe that as many as 6 guys from Pitt could get drafted, and that would be their most since 2011. as far as the guys that no one will be in the first round. It's highly unlikely anyone will be in the second round. But once we get into the day, or actually second and third round are on the same day. Rashad Weaver and Patrick Jones are going to be your first two guys from Pitt that should be off the board. Depends on the buyer. Patrick Jones is a speed rusher. Rashad Weaver can also get after the quarterback, but he's a run stuffer too. I think both those guys will have long careers in the NFL. Then after that, you're looking at Jalen Twyman, DeMar Hamlin will get picked. His stock has gone up. But those guys, the rest of those guys, and Jimmy Morrissey, DJ Turner, all those guys you're talking about 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, but you still get drafted, and that's good. That's good for the program. And if I'm the Steelers, I said this the other day on the show.
Right.
If I'm the Steelers, I'm looking very heavily at Jalen Twyman somewhere starting in the 4th round. Fourth to 7th round. I think 7th round he'd be a complete steal. Same with 6th round. I think he's a 4th or 5th round pick, and I think he'll bring great value. And I believe he's a guy that'll be in the NFL for a long time.
Yeah, and it always depends on the team, the situation when you get into later rounds, and whether that player can have success. It will be great for the Pitt program in terms of recruiting to be able to say we are generating these players into the NFL, and that's whether or not we're a good team. We're getting these players to the National Football League. The Steelers have certainly been prone to draft Pitt players over the years, and this goes all through their history. So they're not going to shy away. It certainly can even be an advantage for some Pitt players if the Steelers are there, feeling like that continuity, that familiarity, the field, all that could be a benefit to you. So that could definitely, for sure, occur, and we will see. But it definitely would be great for the Pitt program if they are able to see some players taken, if they're able to have that number of players taken, if certainly a player goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, and throughout that tweet earlier today that the Steelers have drafted the most Pitt players, certainly no surprise there, but they're certainly prone to be able to draft Pitt players. Turner, it's almost unfortunate just in the respect that it's such a deep position. Just year after year, teams feel like they can replace it every year. The Steelers certainly can churn at that position, so that's maybe his only concern. But once you get in the league, you get in the league, and maybe some players in college football will have an advantage this year than other years they wouldn't have, because players that chose to sit out, seemingly based on Colbert's comments and others, are going to be at a major disadvantage, and teams may not draft them even if they normally were at a higher level stock. So if players played well last year, that could certainly carry a lot of weight, to say the least.
Yeah, DJ Turner is a guy that I think could provide flexibility in that he can line up on the outside, right, but he also started as a slot receiver for Pitt. And we all know with the NFL today with their, right, 3 and 4 wides. And plus he's a very good special teams player, punt and kickoff return.
Yeah, that's big, right?
Yeah, so I think he provides a lot of value, and good kid. It was a great career move for him transferring to Pitt from Maryland. If not, he's probably not even being talked about.
Right.
And the guy that I'm curious is to see what happened. And I don't have much optimism, and I feel bad because I'm not exactly sure what happened. But once he gets drafted or signs a free agent contract, he'll be able to create his own narrative, and that's Paris Ford.
Right.
He opted out during the season.
So much hype before that too.
Yeah, before the season, people were talking about 2nd, 3rd round pick with the guy. He has unbelievable physical skills, and he just didn't. He has the tape to back it up, but everything after that, as far as his offseason workouts, his interviews, right, all that weren't good. Didn't impress NFL people, and he's going to be very lucky to get drafted. And if you'd have said that a year ago, that Paris Ford wouldn't get drafted,
right,
people would have thought you'd been smoking weed.
Yeah, honestly, and it's going to be probably an undrafted free agent situation for him. Someone will take a flyer at some point, but when you have great tape and that tape is over a year old, that tape is no longer great in terms of the National Football League, because that's the one sport you can have tons of rust and it could take forever to shake it off. And if you're not, there's no way to be in football playing shape unless you're playing football. Yep. So that's the problem. You can't see Instagram videos like with basketball players, I can still be in shape. It can't happen in the NFL unless you're playing, and he just didn't play organized football for a year. Could be a problem. For me, a player that I'd like to see have success in the NFL that I think actually could, that's maybe not talked about enough, that certainly started at Pitt and was a veteran great player there, Damar Hamlin. I think maybe he could be something, so I'm hoping for him. I'm going to kind of root for him a little bit there. But that'll do it for this edition of the show. All the coverage, Pittsburgh Sports Now, Steelers Now, Pittsburgh Sports Live, all throughout the day, all throughout the weekend. It's the biggest day, really, on this channel and on many of these sites throughout the year. And it's a very, very important draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers, to say the very least, maybe even an important draft for the future of the Pitt program as well. For Mike Vukovcan, I'm Mike Asti for Pittsburgh Sports Live, Pittsburgh Sports Now, of course, Steelers Now. Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services. There's the sign and number behind Mike V. Enjoy the draft. Merry Draftmas. And let the current Mike Vukovcan of his older years really enjoy the magical time of the year that is the NFL draft.